Okay, the topic of this year, B'ez Hashem, is going to be ribbis mukdemis and ribbis meucheres. Literally, translation of the words are ribbis mukdemis, early ribbis. Ribbis meucheres is late ribbis. As we've discussed previously, ribbis is only aser minatera if it is in a way of petitza, means it's stipulated. At the time that the loan is given, or at the time that the loan is extended, it's stipulated that the loan is being given on condition that interest is going to be paid, or that an extension is being granted on condition that interest is going to be paid. That's ribbis derais. Ribbis derabanan is when there is no stipulation, and that can assume a few different forms. And one of those forms, two of those forms, is ribbis mukdemis and ribbis meucheres, which the quite simply, ribbis mukdemis is the loan has not taken place yet, but you would like to receive a loan. So therefore, one who wants to receive a loan is going to send a gift to the potential lender um, to try to butter him up in order to give a loan. That's ribbis mukdemis. Ribbis meucheres is after the loan is already repaid. Uh, at a later time, a gift or some kind of additional thing is given to the lender in return for giving the loan as a form of thanks or whatever. That's ribbis milcheres. Ribbis milcheres, obviously, it's not in a form of ktsitsa. It's not stipulated. Therefore, it's not ribbis deraisa. It is, however, forbidden midrabanan. It's rabbinically prohibited. However, it's an even lower level of prohibition than what's called avak ribbis, which is a different form of ribbis derabanan, which we'll speak about at length at a later time. Um, but avak ribbis, the halacha is that you have to return lasas yidei shamayim. One who collected avak ribbis, either by mistake or on purpose, but then they want to do tshuva. Um, so there's no obligation to return the ribbis, even the ribbis deraisa. There is an absolute obligation to return it, and if you don't want to return it, then Bezdin forces the lender to return it. But ribbis, avak ribbis, Bezdin cannot force the lender to return it, but Latzis Yidei Shamayim, in order to fulfill his heavenly obligation, it's the right thing to do to return it. Ribbis Mukdemas, Ribbis Mucheres does not need to be returned, even Latzis Yidei Shamayim. Now, there's a big machlekes hapeiskim related to ribbis mukdemis and ribbis mucheres, which we're going to speak about. And this machlekes branches off in a lot of different directions, and there are a lot of practical differences between the two opinions, and it's very easy to get confused. But one easy way of staying focused and keeping things straight is by understanding that this is not five different machlekes in every little detail. There's one fundamental machlekes, and once you understand the fundamental machlekes, then everything else is a logical extension of the primary machlekes. And that's how we are going to explain it, even though at certain points perhaps the lumdus is not 100% accurate, even though it's pretty close and it's more or less correct. But what we're primarily concerned about is getting the details straight and being able to keep track of everything. And therefore, the way we're going to frame it, and again, this is the way we're going to frame it, and it's because this is correct and accurate way of framing it, is that there's essentially one machlekes. What's the machlekes with regard to ribbis mukdamis, ribbis macharis? It's a machlekes in the Rambam and the Rosh. And the machlekes is ribbis mukdamis, ribbis macharis prohibited only if you say specifically here, this is a gift in exchange for the loan that you gave me that I paid you back last week. But if you don't say anything, even if we both know that I'm only giving you a gift, I don't normally give you gifts. I'm only giving you a gift because you did me a favor and gave me a loan. That's permitted, according to one opinion, as long as you don't say the words explicitly. This is for a loan, even if we both know that it's for a loan, even if it's obvious that it's for the loan. And then a second opinion is more strict and says no, doesn't even if you don't say anything, even if you don't say anything, if you both know, if it's clear and it's obvious that it's connected to the loan, that's usher. So the Mishnah says in Masach Bava Metzia, Ein Haim Beis, Lava Heimenu v'hechzer le'as ma'asav. One borrowed money from another person and returned the money. V'hu mashaleach le v'oimer. And then afterwards, at a later time, he sends to him and he says, B'shvil ma'isacha shahayu b'teilas esli. This is for your money that was batal by me, that was spending time by me and not working for you. Zuhi ribbis mucheres. The Mishnah says that is ribbis mucheres. So the Mishnah obviously implies at least that it's only mishaleach leva omer. It's only if you say explicitly. But if you don't say explicitly, b'shvil ma'asecha shehayu b'teilos hetzli, even if it's self-understood that it's b'shvil ma'asecha shehayu b'teilos hetzli, that's permitted. Even according to this opinion, that says that as long as you don't say anything, it's fine. It's not a problem of ribbis mecheres, even if you having in mind that it's ribbis mecheres and that you're giving it in exchange for the loan. It's only permitted to give a small gift. Why? Because to give a very large gift, it's as if you're saying it. You don't have to say the words. You're saying it with your actions speak louder than words. You're saying with your actions that this is b'shvil ma'asecha shayu b'teilos esli. Everyone agrees that to say b'shvil ma'asecha shayu b'teilos esli, to be mafarish, to say explicitly that this is for the loan is us. That's ribbis mecheres. Machlokes only begins if you don't say anything. Okay, but if you give a very large present that is an extremely unusually large, then your actions speak louder than words, and it's as if you're saying. Just to give a practical example, you borrow $1,000 from your neighbor, you pay back. Let's say you pay back a week before Purim. A week later is Purim, and you're giving shalach manos, and the shalach manos that you're giving out to everyone is worth, let's say, $5. How much is shalach manos? And you send your neighbor a $50 shalach manos. The shalach manos that you're giving him is 10 times bigger than the shalach manos you're giving everyone else. It's obvious that that there's something is going on here, and it's for the loan that he helped you out. You paid it back already, so it's in the past. But that's ribbis mucheres. Even a large gift is permitted if it's a very long time after the loan. There's a statute of limitations. Let's say you paid back the loan. The example we gave just now, the loan was paid back a week before Purim. That's why it's also a week later is clearly still too soon. But let's say the loan was paid back in Tishrei, and let's say that Tishrei to Purim 6 months is 5 months is considered a long time. We'll speak later. We'll speak a little bit more about what's considered a long time. Um, but let's assume there is, then that's permitted because again, it's so far removed from the loan, and you're not saying anything. Again, if you say it could even be 10 years later, if you're mefarish, this is for the loan you gave me 10 years ago, it's usher. You're not saying anything, and it's already so far removed that it's no longer connected to the loan. So that is allowed. So that's the first opinion. That's the more lenient opinion. That as long as you're not mefarish, as long as you don't say clearly, either with your words or with your actions, that this is for the loan, then it's permitted. The second opinion, which is a little bit more strict, says no, it's usher even bestam. Even bestam, if you have in mind, if you're thinking that this is for ribbis, this is for the loan, that's not allowed. Bemela, it follows that even a small gift is not allowed. Again, because the distinction here is not a small gift or a large gift. The point is what you're thinking. If you if you think that it's for the loan, needless to say, if you say which is us according to everyone, even if you think that it's an exchange for the loan, that's not allowed, unless again another exception, if it's something that you would have normally done otherwise. Right? There are certain little gifts that people, especially people who know each other, we'll discuss more examples in a minute. The people who know each other, who are close family members, exchange with each other on a regular basis. Again, so then as long as you're not thinking that it's for the loan, as long as you're not thinking that it's for the loan, then that is allowed. What does the halacha follow? So the Rama in Shulchan Aruch and Yoreh Deis Kuf Samach paskins like the more lenient opinion, which is, just to summarize, a small gift is allowed as long as you don't specify, as long as you don't say explicitly that it's for the loan. Even if you were not accustomed, if it's not somebody that you're close with, you would normally have given them small gifts before. You're allowed to give them a small gift now because it's not obvious that it's for the loan, even if you both know that it's for the loan, even if that's your intention is that it's for the loan, it's a small gift, it's not obvious, could be interpreted in other ways. The Alter Rebbe explains that people give small gifts to one another every once in a while. It's fine. It's not obvious. It's not that obvious, at least. So that's how the Rama paskins. However, the Alter Rebbe in Hilchas Ribbis also paskins me'ikar adin, like the Rama, that the ikar halacha is like the more lenient opinion that it's permitted to give a small gift as long as you're not mefarish, as long as you don't state explicitly that it's for the loan. But the Alter Rebbe adds, yesh lahachmer la'atzmei kisvar harishayna. One should be machmer. Well, the way we said it, it was the second svar, but the more strict, the more stringent opinion. Yesh lahachmer la'atzmei. One should be machmer for themselves. We'll discuss what that means soon. So, Lamaisa, let's give some examples. Very often, who do you borrow money from? From your parents, from other family members. You borrow money from your parents and you pay them back. You allowed to send them flowers for Shabbos. Normally, uh, the answer would be yes. If it's something that normally a person sends their parents flowers for Shabbos, or brings their parents flowers for Shabbos, or something else, kugel, whatever somebody normally gives their parents, that's allowed. It's a matana muatas, it's a small matana. You're not mefarish that it's for the loan. You're not even thinking that it's for the loan. And it's something that's something that was normally done even before the loan. It's not connected to the loan, that's allowed. You borrow money from your neighbor, you're allowed to send him the same normal shalach manos that you normally send him every year, the same one that you're giving to everyone else. Matana muatas, you're not mefarish. You're not miskavin. You're not having in mind that it's for the loan. That's perfectly okay. Borrow money from your friend. You're allowed to lend him money in return. A small loan. Normally we say a loan for a loan. We discussed in the previous year, a loan in exchange for a loan is ribbis, potentially even ribbis deraisa. Um, but if it's the same amount of loan for the same amount of money, and it's not stipulated at the time, so it could be ribbis mucheres. But if it's a small loan that you normally would have given otherwise, you're not mefarish, you're not miskaden, and it fulfills all the conditions of a not being a loan for a loan, which is ribbis deraisa mamish, and also not being a ribbis mucheres, that's allowed. You're allowed to give. If you borrow money from a friend, normally when you borrow money from someone, you're not allowed to give them. You're not allowed to do them any favors, any tevas hana. Um, what if it's your friend and they need a ride? You would have given them a ride anyway, right? It's matana muatas. It's a rugel. It's not mefarish. It's not miskaven. These are all things that are mutter. Now, as we mentioned earlier, even according to the more stringent opinion that you're not allowed to give even a small loan if it's not something that you normally would have done otherwise, it's not ragul bakach. You're allowed to do it if a long time passes. If it's very far removed from the loan, and even then, even if it's not ragul, even if it's something that was not normally done otherwise, but not miskala, not mefarish, you don't not have no intention that it's for the loan, and you're not definitely certainly not saying that it's for the loan, then that would be permitted. How do I know? So first of all, because it says it clearly in the Mishnah. Um, but even if it didn't say clearly in the Mishnah, it's the svara. First of all, just a balabatish svara is that if you don't say that, then l'shafkas chayil l'chol beri. Anything you ever do, somebody you lend money for someone, you can never do anything for them ever again. That doesn't make any sense. Um, if you want to be a machmer latzman, like the Alter Rebbe says, yesh la'achmer latzman. But it's more than that. Mefarish is usher according to everyone. If you say explicitly that it's for the loan, it's usher. Everyone agrees that it's usher. Nevertheless, a large gift, even according to the more lenient opinion that says that says a large gift is usher if it's close to the loan. If it's far from the loan, then it's okay, right? So just like we say that according to the more lenient opinion, a large gift is usher close to the time of the loan is mutter if it's far away from the loan. Then so it's according to the more stringent opinion, a small gift which is usher close to the time of the loan is mutter when it's very far away from the loan. Okay, if this is too confusing, then just forget it. Don't get stuck in it. The point is that that's halacha. The halacha is that if it's very far away from the loan, if it's a long time away from the loan, as long as you're not mefarish, you don't say it clearly, then according to the more lenient opinion, you can give even a large gift. According to the more stringent opinion, which the Alter Rebbe says, yesh lahachmer la'atzmei kasvar one should be machmer. Like the more stringent opinion, it's permitted to give al kaponim a small gift. Just to give a mashal. So, another place where we find a similar thing in Hilchah Shabbos, there's Malach of Teichen, and in Siman Shin Chaf Aleph, we find in the Machlekes Rishonim if Teichen applies to food or it does not apply to food. Um, and Maisa, the halacha is that the way the Magen Avraham and the Alter Rebbe and the Beis Yosef paskin is that one should be machmer, like the opinion of the Rashba over there, that one should only cut their food right before the meal, close to the meal, and therefore, okay, say that it's that even if Teichen does apply to food, in that case it doesn't apply, just like Beir does not apply with Derech Achila, so to Teichen does not apply with Derech Achila, and if it's close to the meal, it's considered Derech Achila. But if you cut your food into very large pieces, everyone agrees that it's mutter. Why? Because very large pieces is not Teichen. Teichen means cutting into small pieces, by definition. So the Magen Avraham brings from the Shulchan Geberim, the Alter Rebbe says that it's better to be machmer to always cut it into slightly large pieces because the Rishonim will hold that close to the meal doesn't help. Fine. Again, separate. I'm not getting into a long discussion about Teichen now, but cutting into large pieces is mutter according to everyone because even if Teichen applies to food, cutting into large pieces is not Teichen, right? So same thing over here. A very large amount of time, a very large piece of time that's far removed from the date of the law is mutter according to everyone because this is no longer ribbis mucheres. The ribbis period is over. Now, what's a long time? It does not say. Let's just make something very clear. It does not say in Shulchan Aruch or in any of the primary classic mefarshim and paiskim what is the definition of a long time. If you look in Malaktim and contemporary Svarim and ribbis, you're going to see suddenly a bunch of different opinions. 1 day, 2 days, 30 days, I don't know. But the reality is that it's not really correct to say that there's a certain amount of time or that there's even a machlokes. It's one opinion says 30 days, one opinion says 6 months, one opinion says a year. If it doesn't say in Shulchan Aruch an amount of time, that means there is no fixed amount of time. It depends on the situation. If it was $100 loan, and it's two people who know each other very well, maybe 30 days is a large amount of time. If it was a $10,000 loan, then maybe you need to wait a few years until the excitement and the impression of this loan wears off. Everything depends on the situation, on how much the loan was, on how well two people knew each other before the loan, and it's not really possible to say a fixed amount of time and to give a rule. This is the amount of time that applies in all times and all situations, and that's indeed why in Shulchan Aruch we don't find such a definition. If I can be permitted to give another example from Hilchah Shabbos. There's a halacha in Hilchah Shabbos. Tzarchi katan, stam tzarchi katan kechel shein b'sakana dami. Anything that a katan needs is considered like the halacha of a chayla she'ein b'sakana. And what's the halacha of a chayla she'ein b'sakana? Tzarcha v'nasim al yedei goy. A goy can do anything for a chayla she'ein b'sakana, or even a yid can do isur derabanan, according to the Alter Rebbe, Nisa Deresa with a Shina, for a Chayla Shein Basakan. Okay, so for a Chayla, we know what a Chayla is. What's a cotton? Cotton, anyone is under bar mitzvah, under 9, under 10, under 8, under 3, under 2. So again, in Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't say, it just says the word cotton. The Alter Rebbe says the word cotton, and all the Nesa Kalim and the Paiskim says cotton. But in Malaktim and in Achreinim from the last generation, you find all sorts of different 2 years old, 3 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. The real answer is that there is no clear amount, there is no clear definition of what is a cotton, and it all depends on the situation. If a baby needs to eat a certain type of food, then that is a tzarech that applies only for a baby. If it's an 8-year-old kid, then the 8-year-old can probably find something else to eat, unless there has other specific medical issues, right? If it's a different issue, if it's being locked in a room in the darkness, and the child is afraid of the dark, actually, an 8-year-old might be more afraid of the dark than a 1-year-old baby, and so on. So it's really something that has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. And it's the same thing over here. What's the amount of time that's called a muflag, that's called a long time out of, away from the long? That is something that is a case-by-case basis. V'hakel lefi re'is einei hamayra, or it doesn't mean that you have to ask a rabbi every single time. Hakel lefi re'is einayim, based on the situation and using sound and honest judgment and assessment of the situation on a case-by-case basis. Now, all of this to be machmer, even if you're not mefarish, even bestam, even a small gift, even even a small gift, stam, and even ragil, even if it was ragil before. Sorry, if it was ragil before, everyone says that it's that everyone agrees that it's mutter. But even a small gift, close to the loan, if you're not mefarish, the Alter Rebbe says yesh lahachmer la'atzmai. One should be machmer for themselves, which means if someone else comes to ask you, uh, you don't have to tell them that they have to be machmer. Maybe you could tell them that the Alter Rebbe says yesh lahachmer la'atzmai, but you have to tell them that the ikar halacha is that it's mutter. It's mutter as long as you're not mefarish, whether, as we mentioned, whether through speech or through action. So if you give a small gift and you're not mefarish, um, which besides for the halacha and the general discussion in Achreinim, when sometimes it says in halacha that something is mutter, a bal nefesh should be machmer, or yesh lahachmir la'atzmei. So the shaila is when a person comes to a Rav and asks a shaila, does the Rav have to tell them that bal nefesh should be machmer, or does the Rav have to tell them the ikar adin? Or maybe the Rav has to see for himself, as for dealing with the bal nefesh, tell him you're a bal nefesh, you should be machmer. Without getting into that discussion, there is a Musar Haskell over here, which that sometimes besides for the value of limud Torah and of knowing halacha, just knowing Hamaisa Asher Yasun, there's also an added benefit of learning halacha, of having the ability to be Menkayim Mitzvahs Behidr in a way that you know what is a Bal Nefesh, what is a good Chumer, what is not what is a valid Chumer, what is not a valid Chumer, what is a valid kula, what is a kula that's a little bit, maybe not so such a good idea to rely on, and depending on the situation, knowing what's the deraisa, what's the derabanan. So we're very fortunate to be able to learn halacha and to know when we should be machmer, when we could be machmer, when we should not be machmer, and so on. And as Chazal tell us in Pirkei Avos, Le'am Haaretz Chassid. Okay. Until this point, the machlokes is miskaven or bestam. If you're allowed to give ribbis mecheres bestam without saying anything, even if you're thinking that it's ribbis, but if you're saying it bestam, or if it's only aser, if you're mefarish that it's for ribbis mecheres. Now the shaila is, what if you're mefarish that it's for something else? Pashtus is mutter. Now the truth is I haven't seen it written clearly about ribbis mecheres. The truth is I didn't look too hard because it's pashat, as we'll see later, that it is written clearly that it's mutter even by ribbis b'shas piroin, which we're going to speak about next. Kol sheken ribbis mecheres, maybe it's not a kol sheken, but it's, at the very least it's on the same level. That if you're mefarish that it's that you're giving it for something else, that's mutter. Just Just to give a practical example, just to explain how obvious it is that this is the case. If you borrow money from someone and then you pay them back, and then they invite you to their house for Shabbos, the lender invites the borrower to the house for Shabbos. You're allowed to bring them flowers for Shabbos, or is ribbis mucheres? The Alter Rebbe says you should be machmir, even matana moetes. Chalal na ribbis mucheres, no shaychus to ribbis mucheres. It's a polite and normal thing to do to bring someone flowers for Shabbos or whatever, wine, something. When you go to their house for Shabbos, it's even you want to be mamish machmir, be mefarish that this is for Shabbos, this is for inviting us. It's nothing to do with the loan. But even if you're not mefarish, just like actions speak louder than words, actions speak louder than words over here. Also, your actions are being mefarish that you're giving it for something else. No connection to the loan. Okay, this is a simple point, but just important not to get confused. Now, we'll move on to ribbis b'shas piroin. Ribbis b'shas piroin means that it's not milcheres. Milcheres means after the loan is paid back, then a week later you send them shalach manos. A week later you can bring the flowers, you give something else. Ribbis b'shas piroin is at the time that you're paying back the loan, you're giving ribbis. Now, even though this seems like the worst form of ribbis ever, the truth is that this is still ultimately, it's not, if it's, as long as it was not done in a way of ktsitsa, it was not stipulated at the time of the loan, it's still ribbis derabanan. Not only it's ribbis derabanan, it's not even avak ribbis, it's on the level of ribbis mucheres. Which means, just as a reminder, it does not need to be paid back even lotzis yitei shamayim. L'chatchila, it's usher. It's usher to take ribbis mukdemis. It's usher to accept ribbis mucheres. If somebody brings you back a loan and together with flowers, together with $50 shalach manas, you're not allowed to take it. But once you took it, you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to give it back. But it's usher to take it. Usher isur midirabanan. So the Alter Rebbe says, "B'shas hapiroin." These are the words of the Alter Rebbe, and just read the words of the Alter Rebbe because the Alter Rebbe's lashon is very important. The Alter Rebbe's lashon is always very important, but it's particularly important over here. Ubeshas hapiroin, at the time of payment. L'divrei hakel, aser lazel litin v'lazel lakabel afilu davar mod yesem recheve. It is forbidden for this one to give and for the other one to accept even a small amount that is more than the amount of the loan. Bein mois, bein davar acher, whether it's money or it's something else, it's flowers. Yeah, afilu bestam, even if you don't say anything. Right? There's a machlokes by ribbis mucheres if it's bestam is mutter. Some according to the Meikar din, we say that it's mutter. It's only yesh lahachmir la'atzmi. But over here the Alter says l'divrei hakel it's also even bestam. V'afilo einu miskaven klal b'shvil alva, even if you're not thinking that it's for the loan, you're thinking that it's for something else. V'afilo ragel litin le'matanas kaidem lachin, even if it's somebody that you are accustomed to giving presence at other times for other reasons. Shakal ma shenoisen b'shasa perein yosim rechayvoi nire keribis. Everything that you give, anything that you give at the time of payment, looks like ribis. Now, there's a big machlekes how to understand this halacha, and the machlekes is based on a contradiction between the halacha and halacha ribis, and halacha and cheshen mishpat sim reish lamed beis. I don't want to get into it. What is the halacha? Which this is the most practical case. Ribbis b'shas peroin, or your mefarish, that is for something else. Like we just discussed by ribbis mecharis. Ribbis b'shas peroin, that you're mefarish, that it's not ribbis. You're saying I'm giving something else. Now, there are paiskim. Not stam paiskim gedela, paiskim the Machne Ephraim, and the Teres of, who, as we mentioned in the previous year, the Teres of is not the Teres of the Taz and Shulchan Aruch. Teres of is the Haran Stipler. Teres of and Hilchos Ribbis, who say that it's mutter to give b'shas peroin, even if you're mefarish, that it's for matana. I'm paying you back the loan, and I'm giving you extra as a gift. And this is the thing that everyone knows is asr. You can't say ribbis is a gift, right? And it's true. You can't say ribbis is a gift. You can't say be kaitzitz. Everyone goes, you can't be kaitzitz. You can't stipulate, I'm going to borrow $1,000. I'm going to pay you back in 30 days, $1,000 plus $100 gift. This is ribbis deraisa, no tchias amesim, right? Everyone, nobody argues this, right? The Magen Ephraim says it wasn't stipulated chas v'shalom. At the time of the loan, you're saying $1,000, and since you're such a nice guy, I'm going to give you an extra $100 as a gift. Says the Magen Ephraim, This is mutter. This is not. It's not ribbis. It's not ribbis. It's not even ribbis b'shas piroin. Ribbis b'shas piroin is bestam. I'm giving you extra. I'm not saying what it. Here I'm being mefarish that it's for matana. It's something else. Says it Terzav, the same thing. Terzav says it. Barichus Gdoile proves brings many rights. However, the Alter Rebbe writes beferish not like this. Not here, but earlier in Sif Dalit. Afilu ribbis shel devreim. This is the Alter Rebbe's words. But there, afilu ribbis shel devreim im oimer shehu matana. Even the ribbis, even we just said that ribbis deraisa. If it's ktitza, it's asr. It's an isr deraisa. Even to call it, even if you call it a matana, the Alter Rebbe adds over there when he says even ribbis shel devreim is the same thing. You can't call it a matana and say that it's not ribbis because that's what ribbis is. Ribbis is a matana, and the Torah answered this matana, and Chazal called the taken the rabbanon came deraisa taken. When they answered ribbis the rabbanon, they said the same thing. You can't say that it's a matana. Okay, so obviously, as Chassidim, we follow what the Alter Rebbe says. However, those who are not necessarily um, accustomed to following the Alter Rebbe's opinions in every uh, area of halacha, so have a Machne Ephraim to rely on. They have a Haran Steipler to rely on. Although there's a it's very much fair to question whether or not the Terizov would have um, written what he did had he seen the Alter Rebbe, but that's neither here nor there. What we do have to ask is what is, according to the Alter Rebbe, what is the Alter Rebbe's opinion if you're mefarish that it's for something else entirely, not a matana? For example, it's for the tircha. It's a very common case. One person lays out money for another person for an Uber, and when they get home, the borrower pays back the one who laid out the money with an extra few dollars is for the tir. You're not saying it's for a matana. What the Alter Rebbe doesn't like saying that it's for a matana because kol riba sheba oila matana mechila is matana mechila. Nevertheless, the Torah answered it. Over here, you're not saying that it's a matana. Matana, according to the Alter Rebbe, is just another word for ribbis. That's the problem. But over here, you're saying that it's for the tircha. On the other hand, what the Alter Rebbe says is why. What the Alter Rebbe says over here about ribbis b'shas piroin, kol masha noisin b'shas piroin nira ribbis. Anything that you're giving b'shas piroin looks like ribbis. So from Sif Dalid in the Alter Rebbe you could be medayek one way. From this is Sif Zayin, I think you could be medayek another way. But even what it says in Sif Zayin, you could say, okay, kol masha noisin, it looks like ribbis unless you're mefarish that is not ribbis. So lemaisa, it seems like the consensus is to be mekel on this. Befrat that there are Gedolei HaPesachim, as we mentioned, who are mekel even to give a matana. So the Alter Rebbe is taking machmer on matana, but once you go down a step, even from matana, and we're dealing with a derabanan and a very relatively light derabanan, it's even lighter than a vak ribbis. Um, there's room to be mekel. However, there is an etza that the place can give, which this etza saves us from any concern of ribbis, and practically that's what should be done, which is to say, give it to tzedakah. And what a lot of rabbanim say is, and to say give it to tzedakah is he's not going to remember, and then he's just giving him an extra chore to do. The next whatever $5 that you give to tzedakah, the next where does this come up the most often when you don't have change, which we'll discuss more in a second. But when you don't have change, so say instead of looking for change, say the next 25 cents that you give to tzedakah will be from me. You're giving it on my behalf. Um, so that's definitely okay. That's definitely okay. Saying it's for the tircha, uh, there's room to be makel, but it's better not. It's better not to. Therefore, we should try to avoid looking for kulis and ethereum and ribbis. It's a very slippery slope. But with regard to the very common case that we mentioned earlier about not having enough change, so the Minchas Yitzchak in Shabbos Teshuvos, it's Chelik Tes Siman Peches discusses this, and the one who asked the Shaila to the Minchas Yitzchok wrote, he said the svara is that it's not agar notar. It's not there's no shaykhs service. You're saying I owe you $4.76. I don't have time or patience to I only have a five and I don't have time or patience to look for the change. So whatever, that's I'm just gonna give you a five. You're being mafarish that it's not four ribbis, right? So the Minchas Yitzchok says it's a good svar. It's a good svar. Practically you are being mafarish that it's not four ribbis, but he says that's only from the loiva. From the borrower's perspective, there's no shaykhs to ribbis over here because the only reason he's giving it is because he's not interested in looking for change. But from the malve, from the lender's perspective, there is the Minchas Yitzchak is concerned that there is ribbis because practically I lent you a certain amount of money and I'm getting back more. And I'm getting back more. Why? Because you're too lazy to look for change. That's not the reason that takes it out of the ribbis, the realm of ribbis for the loiva does not apply for the malva. Practically, the malva lent a certain amount of money and is getting back more. So the Ibn Chassidzik is not so comfortable with it, even though he says it's a svara yeshara. He says it's a good svara. But therefore, he gives that eitzah that we mentioned earlier. Say that it's for tzedakah. Say that it's for tzedakah, and then and then you're for sure good. The Chalkas Binyamin, Siman Kuf Samach Sefkat Lamed Gimel, writes that if it's such a small amount of money that everyone knows that it's not because of Agar Noter, it's so obvious that it's 9 cents that it's she's Pasha not interested, does not have the change, and is not able to go around now looking for pennies and nickels to get change. He says that everyone would agree. He says even the Minchas Yitzchak would agree that that is permitted. Um, and rounding off a few cents, he says that's totally fine. That's mutter even according to the Minchas Yitzchak. Okay, whether or not we have to accept that, maybe we do, maybe we don't. Like we said, there's always a simple eitzah of saying give it to tzedakah, or the next 10 cents that you give to tzedakah, you're giving for me. Even if you don't do that, if the reason is really because you're not interested in looking for change, um, then there is room to rely on the Mekel. Um, but important note is obviously this all only applies when you're paying with cash. But if it's Cash App or PayPal, there's no such thing as a tircha of looking for change. If you owe $4.99, you should pay back $4.99, not $5. This is ribbis b'shas peroin. Ribbis, even less than a Shabbat prota is ribbis. Ribbis b'shas peroin is um, in Isudarbanan. So there's no reason to do it. If you did it, you don't have to send back the penny because ribbis b'shas peroin is like ribbis mecheres. You don't have to pay back even less it's Yidei Shemayim, but definitely should not be done. Okay, and with that, we will stop here for today, and until next time, Be'ezer Hashem.